everybody kind of sees the outward success of the restaurant business and so forth, but you don't really see always the inward success. And that, I worked just as hard at building my family as I did building our business. And, as I was building the business, same thing applied to my family. Failure's not an option.
I think this is part of the reason you asked me, why do I do the podcast? Well, part of the reason I do it is because I think people can really get a lot from stories like what you just shared. I mean, I think a lot of people look at you and look at a lot of successful people, even people maybe specifically in the restaurant business, and they can't imagine how they can get to where you are or even somewhere along the way. Especially if they're the somebody that's a sophomore that's flunking out and, and like you, I sort of had my struggles in school, in childhood, and didn't identify as smart, right? Like I wasn't even sure if I was capable of doing anything, And I think there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily see how they can get from where you were to where you are. And so, I'd like to just dive into that a little bit more with you. Also being a product of divorce, my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old, separated, a little before that. And so, I think at that time in particular, divorce was a very different animal and it was very traumatic. And I don't know, enough about your parents' dynamic and your dad and, exactly what went on there, but maybe you could just talk a little bit more about how that really impacted you at that time, including your struggles academically, the drinking, the partying, that phase that you were somehow able to get through. I mean, a lot of people don't.
Yeah. That's a great question. And, I think about that all the time because my kids really don't have any adversity in their life. My kids, have everything they want and et cetera, et cetera. And I, they end up being great kids. And, that adversity for me, was very, obviously I was too young to process it or anything else at that point in time. And, I grew up in Upper Arlington and, and I grew up in the have-not section of Upper Arlington and, I joke now I live in the have section, but I grew up in the have-not section and I never felt comfortable. I never felt like I belonged, my parents were divorced. I had long hair. I was smoking. I was just kind of an outcast and so that became very difficult. And then when I came back after being a runaway, I knew it somehow. I had, to know, and I said to myself, I remember, listen, nobody's going to take care of me but me, and, I'm not going to, the only way I'm going to be successful is, I'm not going to win the lottery. I'm not going to inherit any money. And, so I'm going to have to work hard for it. And not that I was working hard my high school years, but I knew intuitively that I had to take care of myself and make my life. And so, even though I didn't go right after college, I knew I was going to go to college. I knew I was going to be successful. And I didn't know how at that point in time. And, so, I fast forward, it gave me a tremendous amount of drive, not having anything, and seeing all these kids around me with everything and, Scioto Country Club and all that, and stuff. And it just, said, I want that. And so, as I got older, I kept saying to myself, and telling people I'm working hard for a wife and kids I don't know yet. And you have to make a decision in your life. You're either going to, wallow in what's happened to you or accept what's happened to you and make your change and change your situation. So you can either continue the cycle or you can break the cycle and change it. And I chose to break the cycle. And I'll tell you, one of my most favorite days in my life was I'm sitting on my couch in my beautiful home in Arlington. I'm probably, I'm 60 now. I'm probably 48, 50, whatever. I don't know, maybe, 45 to, and I'm in my house and I'm having a glass of Chardonnay sitting on my couch, and my dog is on my lap, my favorite dog, and petting him, and my wife is up at our kitchen counter with her apron on, and several girlfriends around drinking wine, and all three of our kids are running through the house with their friends, and and I just sat there and had another epiphany. I just sat there and I just took it all in and just looked at the scene, and and that was the perfect for me culmination of. That I had broken the cycle, that I created this marriage, this good marriage, and this good family, these great kids, and this beautiful home, and this great business, and I'd broken the cycle, and I had done what I set out to do, and it was a lot of hard work, obviously, over the next 25 years it was, or 30 years, but it was one of my finer moments in my life, personal moment, deeply personal moment, I guess.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. I think you're right. I think, people do either continue the cycle or try to break it. Breaking it is hard. I mean, continuing it is hard too, but in a lot of ways it feels easier. You have, I mean, I've seen that scene, and it's beautiful. And I've, felt that too in my own life, and it's a good feeling. But it takes a lot to get there,
sure.
Right?
Oh,
I mean, breaking the cycle isn't something.
Thousands of steps.
Yeah, because there's a lot of conditioning. I mean, you witnessed, you absorbed, embodied a lot of shit along the way, and it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of determination, a lot of courage to really make the decisions that are necessary in order to be able to really break it. Not an easy thing to do.
No. It takes a lot. I mean, it takes a lot of work. Simultaneously, I'm trying to build my career and build a business. And I remember in my late 20s, I met my wife when I was 30. And in my late 20s, I started to see a psychologist for a couple of years just to make sure I cleaned up my own house, that I was ready to meet. And because I knew I was ready. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have, I've already started to say I'm working for a wife and kids. I don't know yet, and so forth. And I'm graduated school. And I'm starting my career and so forth. And so I spent a couple of years with a psychologist just to make sure that, I was on track, and that I was healthy, and I kind of cleaned up everything in the past and so forth. And it was, and that worked. And sure enough, I got done with that. And sure enough, I met Molly, and I was ready.
Yeah.
If I would have met her 3-4 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have been ready.
Yeah.
So, that was, I think, an important part. And I saw a psychologist, another, 10 years later for a couple of years. Then I was just dealing with, the kids and the home, and really juggling the business and the work, and making sure I was staying balanced and so forth throughout that whole thing. Because I didn't want to wake up one day and have a successful company but not know my kids or be divorced or whatever. So I took another period of time, to make sure I had healthy friendships and everything was healthy, but life is a balance and all the way through. And, I always said, as I was building the company and building our family, I have a big picture on my wall. My son's high school graduation, we took a family portrait. And that's right in the center of my wall in my office, right above my desk. And, everybody kind of sees the outward success of the restaurant business and so forth, and my success there, but you don't really see always the inward success. And that, I worked just as hard at building my family as I did, building our business. And, as I was building the business, same thing applied to my family. Failure is not an option. Divorce is not an option. You can knock me down, but I'm going to get right back up, one foot in front of the other, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, building the house one brick at a time, and so that kind of fortitude and that I've always been a goal setter, but that, visionary process, and those here's what I wanted to achieve, that balance in my life, my balance in work and success in my marriage and success in my family and success at work was, like I said, a culmination of, really hundreds of thousands of steps along the way, and decisions, and doing the right thing, and checking yourself, and all those things, and so it's been a good, I'm 60 today. I'm probably happier now than I ever have been in my life, and content, and so it's good.
That's good. I am curious, I want to talk about that balance a little bit, but before we do that, you talked about that grit and that adversity, and the runaway thing, that period of time. I wonder, when you think about, like, what you just said, like, you can't knock me down, and, certain things are not options. I wonder, like, when you had that period where you were on the run and, couch surfing and whatever, like, how much of that, now that you look back, really did help you build that, like, I can't fail, that survival sort of instinct, or I don't know, part of you? Was that part of it, or do you look back on that period as a really dark period that you never want to repeat?
Well, I think certainly it was a dark period, and I didn't really even know necessarily how dark it was, but to illustrate that, my 16th birthday was June 14th, and I tried to kill myself on my 16th birthday in a run. So that certainly was a low point and a dark point. But, that adversity, when I look back, that adversity of growing up, those 10 years from, and I lost my dad when I was 20, and I wasn't close to him. It's ironic. The first full day I spent with him in 10 years was the day before he died. We didn't know he was going to die. He died suddenly that night. So that was kind of a full circle for me. But, that adversity, that 10-year span or so was very, very challenging. And, I got turned down to culinary school because my grades were so bad. I had to go to Columbus State, take some math and English courses. And it's so easy. It is easy to quit. It's easy to stall. It would have been easier for me to say, I can't get into culinary school, but that adversity and making it through that adversity had given me a sort of inner strength, I think, and coupled with growing up in the have-not section in Arlington, and not having a healthy family, and being poor and dirt poor and broke, at that point in time, has given me the drive, and so and the fortitude, and so I think in that way I was blessed. I feel blessed. Even though I had to go through all that.
Yeah. I think that's the hard part, and you mentioned the kids, and you wonder sometimes. I think parents make the mistake of not letting their kids experience adversity, right? I mean, it's not always going to be to the extremes that you felt, but they call the coach when their kid's not playing enough. They do things that, like, they think are trying to be good parents and advocate, but they gotta take some hits along the way. I mean, that's how you build. That's how you learn to navigate the world.
Yeah, well, kids do. I mean, no matter what you do as a parent,
Right.
kids, pressure in today's schools and so forth. I mean, they take their hits all the time. But our kids grew up, really wanting for nothing. We always said, you're not going to get the first kid to get an iPhone. You're not going to be the last kid, but they always had everything they want. I've never seen a financial aid office, blah, blah, blah. But with that said, and I've never raised my voice to my kids, I could think on one hand, and there was only one way to get dad pissed off and, or have his raise his voice at you, is when they act entitled. And, our whole thing with our kids was, you do your job, we'll do our job. You work hard in school, you be a good person, you be charitable, you be a good friend. You don't, talk down about lesser kids that don't have what you have, and all those things, And if you act entitled, you can see dad's hair go back on the back of his head real quick. And so we've ended up, with, even though our kids really haven't had that much adversity other than normal school stuff, they would say in their own right they had. My middle son had dealt with some depression. My oldest son, had some issues of his own, but all in all, not too much, but they ended up being great kids. And again, I think that they never had to do any chores or anything around the house. My son told me one day, he goes, "Dad, you really have taught me how to work hard." He's at the study table in high school, and he goes, I have. A lot of dads make their kids work or do this or that. We always had them work in our business. They all had to work in the restaurants during high school a little bit, and he said, "No, what you've done to build a business, your business, because they saw me leave I traveled all over the country to build restaurants. I was always coming and going and working hard. So that was a good thing. But yeah, the adversity for the kids, it can cut both ways. I mean, it could really, I agree with you. We don't want to be helicopter parents and all that other thing. But on the same token, I've always wanted to be better for my kids growing up. I lived in the financial aid office. I could never. Yeah. So
it's a fine line because you do want to give your kids the experience and the things in life that maybe you didn't have, you wish you had, including love from a father, right? And on the other hand, like you don't want to spoil them, you don't want to entitle them, you don't want to give them too much. So it is a fine line. In fact, I was thinking about this the other day. I think every kid should work in a restaurant or somehow in a service position. At 16 years old, worked as a busboy at Lindy's. Ross, if you remember, was the manager.
GM back then. Yeah,
he was tough, and the experience of being on the other side. I think is one. I'll never look at a busboy, a waiter with anything other than just the utmost respect. Having done that job.
Yeah.
I think there is some humility that can be gained by doing those jobs.
Yeah.